Welcome to the deep dive. We take your specialized sources, your notes, and really distill them down into knowledge you can use right away. Today, we're kind of going on a mission that completely sidesteps the usual MBA playbook. We're looking past the hustle culture, the aggressive growth stuff that you hear everywhere. Our sources today, they flip things around. They're applying these really old principles of strategic defense, essentially adapting the art of war, you could say, applying it directly to setting up a company, those critical early steps. And you, the listener, asked, what's the unconventional wisdom? What operational financial knowledge do we really need for long-term viability, not just a flashy launch?
Exactly. We're sort of reframing the whole thing. It's not about winning a quick race. It's more like building a fortress, something that can actually withstand a long siege. And what's really interesting here is how these sources view business. It's not this open field you just go conquer. It's a strategic battlefield. Prudence, careful resource management, being prepared. Those are the top strategies here. So we're pulling out advice that stresses defense, resilience, maybe over just pure aggressive offense.
Okay, let's unpack that philosophy. And I guess we have to start right where so many new ventures stumble, right? The financial foundations. And this first bit of advice, well, it's radically counterintuitive, especially today. It's this core defensive idea called the capital split.
Yeah, the source material is really explicit. It demands extreme caution financially. When you're setting up, invest only 50% of your total available capital into the business operations, the other half. That remaining 50%, you have to keep it separate, completely untouched. It's your strategic emergency fund. That's tough, psychologically, for entrepreneurs.
Right.
Because it forces you to rethink what successful launch even means. It's not about how much you can throw at it, but how securely you can hold back. In strategic terms, it means you never overextend your supply lines. Any military campaign textbook will tell you an exposed supply line. That's where you're fatally vulnerable. So that 50% reserve, it's your resilience guarantee, basically. If a big unexpected cost hits, maybe a supply chain breaks down or the new regulation fee pops up, even a lawsuit, you don't panic. You don't have to immediately scramble for high-interest loans or sell off assets. You keep things stable while maybe others are flailing.
Okay, but I have to push back a bit here. If you hold back 50%, doesn't that just take you out of the running for that fast, aggressive scale-up? The kind VCs often look for. It feels almost anti-growth.
Yeah.
If you limit your capital like that, aren't you just giving up market share from the start?
That's a really key point, and it gets to the heart of the philosophy in these sources. They argue that aggressive growth without reserves often leads to spectacular failure. Why? Because it values speed over actual stability. This advice, it's geared towards building something for longevity, not just quick flip or acquisition. It's about being the last one standing, maybe. And this discipline, it goes right down to the mundane stuff, too, the day-to-day processes, like the need to separate funds. It's critical. We're talking strict isolation. Working capital here, personal savings over there, and that emergency fund completely walled off. Because if those lines get blurry, say you use the emergency cash to cover payroll because you miscalculated, well, the whole defensive structure is shot, the firewall's down, and suddenly your personal assets could be at risk too.
Right. So it's less about need accounting and more about strategic survival. Okay, so the financial walls are up. Now we look outward. And often the first contact with the market, dealing with credit, services, that's where people can get burned. Which brings us to legal defense. And the sources are, well, brutally realistic here. They warn that some business owners, if they run into trouble, legal issues, or owe money, they might actively try to hide assets, move things around to avoid paying up. So the source says you absolutely cannot extend credit or loan out services without proper, legally tight documents. And there's this term here we should probably clarify, hypothecation. What exactly is that in this context? Is it just a fancy word for collateral?
It's related, yeah, but maybe a bit broader sometimes, especially with services or debts that haven't fully materialized yet. Hypothecation is basically securing an asset against a future debt, but crucially without transferring ownership right away. Think of it like a mortgage, but applied here, it could mean securing your potential recovery against, say, the client's equipment or their future receivables, maybe other assets they own. It's definitely not just a handshake deal. It needs to be a properly registered legal claim against something tangible. And the reason for all this legal meticulousness is precisely because of that risk you mentioned, the chance of evasive tactics. If you go into business assuming everyone will act in perfect good faith, well, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, potentially disaster. You need serious due diligence. Look beyond just a credit score. You need to understand the other party's setup. Where are their assets? Before you commit your valuable services or goods, it's like anticipating your opponent's possible retreat tactics.
Okay. So defense really is the best offense here. Assume your clients might try to shield their assets if challenged. All right, let's shift focus internally now. The second big pillar for strategic stability, counsel and troop morale, your intelligence network, and your frontline team, right?
If the money reserve is your logistical backbone, then your professional counsel, that's your specialized intelligence unit. The sources are quite specific here. They mandate assembling a core team. Non-negotiable, trusted professionals. You need a chartered accountant, a company secretary, a corporate lawyer, and this one's interesting, a labor compliance professional.
That exact list is interesting. Why those specific four? And why do they need to be regularly involved, not just called when there's a fire? Like, what does the labor compliance person catch that the main corporate lawyer might miss?
Well, the roles are highly specialized for managing different kinds of strategic risk. Your accountant, they map out the finances, tax strategy, cash flow health. The corporate lawyer handles the big external stuff, contracts, potential lawsuits. But the labor compliance professional, their focus is entirely internal regulatory risk. Things like wage laws, working hours, correct termination procedures, harassment policies, discrimination, all that. And these internal labor issues, even small ones, can completely derail operations. They can trigger huge penalties from regulators. So your corporate lawyer might be looking at shareholder agreements, but the labor expert ensures your actual workforce structure is legally sound, insulated from common disputes. These four roles together, they act like your early warning system, spotting weaknesses in tax, governance, contracts, and crucially, employee relations before they become full-blown crises.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like outsourcing parts of your strategic defense planning. And speaking of internal strength, this brings us to probably the most counterintuitive piece of advice on employee relations. This feels like, I don't know, business heresy today with everyone obsessed with branding. Yeah, the sources strongly recommend flipping traditional spending priorities. Instead of pouring resources into public relations, external advertising, big branding campaigns trying to shape how the outside world sees you. The real strategic advantage, they argue, comes from sharing business profits directly with your employees.
It's a pretty profound shift in thinking, isn't it? The usual model is all about external validation, looking good to the market. This art of war approach, it focuses on building unbreakable internal loyalty. You're investing in your troops, so to speak. By sharing the profits, you create a genuine vested interest among your workforce. They stop being just employees. They become, in a way, partners in the success of the whole operation. And that loyalty, the high morale, the intrinsic motivation that wins battles or achieves business goals far more reliably than some temporary good press. What you get is a highly motivated, high-performing team that's inherently more stable. It reduces turnover, boosts efficiency, and makes the whole organization much more resilient when external market shocks inevitably happen.
Wow. The discipline that would take. Ignoring that constant pull towards external marketing, focusing inward instead. That alone would be a massive differentiator. And that internal stability, that resilience, I think this is kind of the pivot to our next point, right? The constant fight for operational excellence, stable processes.
Precisely. We tend to think of stability as the static thing you achieve, like a destination. But the source material frames it very differently. It's a constant, ongoing effort, almost like warfare against, entropy and external changes. The requirement is continuous innovation and refinement. Every system, every process, every single procedure needs constant attention. This isn't just like an annual review meeting. It's a permanent state of trying to optimize and refine. And you have to keep at it constantly until your operations are stable. And even then, that stability is something you have to actively defend day in, day out. The moment you stop refining, your systems start to degrade, risk creeps back in, and that stability you fought for just evaporates.
That idea, stability, as something you have to actively fight for every single day, really puts the whole rush to launch mentality into perspective, doesn't it? And this leads us nicely to the final point, something often forgotten in the excitement of starting up. The exit strategy, or even just closing down the company properly. Yeah, this detail gets overlooked by so many ambitious founders who are just focused on getting started. We know registering a company in many places can be pretty quick, maybe just a couple of weeks, but actually closing it down, winding it up properly, that is a much, much longer, more complex, and very compliance-heavy process.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen entrepreneurs spend, seriously, 10 times longer trying to shut down a failed venture than they ever spent setting it up. It's a massive drain, emotionally and mentally too. And this is where that long-term vigilance, that meticulous record-keeping really pays off in the end. Because the closing process requires all your statutory filings, all the tax records, labor compliance, governance documents we talked about, they all have to be perfectly in order and often maintained perfectly for years, right up until the regulators officially strike the company name off the register. If your records are messy, if you missed even one compliance filing years back, the whole process can just stall indefinitely. So regulatory compliance isn't just some bureaucratic hurdle, it's the absolute non-negotiable ticket to a successful, clean retreat or decommissioning, if it comes to that.
So pulling this all together, what does it mean for you, the listener? I think the central theme running through all this is, well, it's a potent counter-narrative to the grow-at-all-costs culture. Success, guided by these kinds of principles, seems to rely much less on just aggressive market capture and far more on deep internal financial discipline, proactive legal defense, and really strong employee commitment built on actually sharing the rewards.
Yeah, if you connect the dots, the key strategic takeaways are all about building that internal integrity. Stick rigidly to that 50% capital rule. Always keep that operational breathing room. Never, ever extend credit without legally securing it first using things like hypothecation. Make sure you assemble that core compliance team, your accountant, company secretary, lawyer, labor expert to head off risks before they blow up. And maybe most radically strategically, choose to share profits with your team over just spending it all on PR. Build that genuine loyalty from the inside out.
It really does change how you might view success and risk, doesn't it? So here's a final thought to leave you with. Since registering a company might take just 2 weeks, but closing it down properly demands maybe years of perfect, rigorous compliance. Does true long-term business strategy lie not just in how fast you can launch, but maybe more in the intense discipline needed to eventually decommission the operation successfully and cleanly? It forces you to ask, are you building for the sprint, or are you building something that can endure right to the very end? Something to consider about the need for absolute long-term vigilance in every single strategic move.